This next segment is sponsored by Gateway Foundation. Fall is football season and fantasy football season. We know sports betting is gambling, but is fantasy football a form of gambling too? Well, for some people it is yes. Okay, that is the answer. What might start as a fun game played between friends can quickly become problematic for someone who has previously struggled with gambling addiction. So we have Miss Mercedes Kent here, Program Director of Central Illinois Outpatient for Gateway Foundation. She's here to talk about how fantasy football can be dangerous for some people and what to do when gambling becomes a problem. So Mercedes, our first question for you is, what is the difference between fantasy sports and sports betting?
Both fantasy sports and sports betting on the premise that you're predicting the outcome of the game. So some people may say that fantasy sports is not necessarily gambling because it's a game of skill as opposed to sports betting. But those with sports betting, sometimes there's monetary things that are involved with the fantasy football, and those that also do fantasy football also can participate in betting on regular games.
Yeah, and so why is fantasy football problematic for someone in recovery?
It only appears to be skills-based. So fantasy football is trying to base your skill on what the players are going to do, what the outcome of the game is. And so despite the amount of research and preparation that you can do, you can never really identify what the outcome is going to be because there's different variables such as coaching and weather and injuries. So you can fall down the rabbit hole pretty easily with the fantasy football that you have the highs and lows of the game, and you can get overly obsessive about the points and the players. And so, it can turn from being just fun into a gambling addiction.
Speaking of addiction, you kind of mentioned some of those signs, but let's further elaborate. What should we be looking out for when it comes to signs of addiction in this?
Yeah, so fantasy football, it can turn into a gambling addiction. And some of the things that you might want to look out for is if your family or friend is spending more time, if they are neglecting family things, if they are spending more money, if they're being sneaky about, different incomes that they have and applying for credit cards and focusing a lot of time on the fantasy football that's deteriorating and taking away from time from work or children or home.
Wow, very interesting. And so how does Gateway kind of help those who may be facing addiction? Yeah,
so at Gateway Foundation, we target the whole person through holistic and evidence-based practices. We can identify maybe some of those thoughts or feelings that are driving the need to gamble. It could be, somebody could be trying to escape from depression or anxiety and using gambling as a coping skill. So we can identify those thoughts and behaviors. We also provide, 12-step education. So there are gambling anonymous groups available, and so finding support system through that is something that's really crucial, and developing and changing different behaviors.
Wow, it's so interesting though. It's so interesting. I'm sure there's families out there or even individuals who may be seeking help. How can we get in touch with Gateway?
Well, Gateway Foundation has targeted treatment therapies that we use, again, to treat the whole person. So Gateway is also Illinois' largest provider of co-occurring disorders in the state. So we want to treat the whole person, the whole family, and we can be reached at 855-925-GATE, and then also at www.gatewayfoundation.org. We have 24-hour counselors online that can at least start the process and get any questions answered, and then we can go from there.
Definitely. Always a great, interesting conversation with Mercedes. Thank you for coming. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.